Welcome into Redacted. We are live. It is 4 p.m. Eastern Time, 2 p.m. in the Rocky Mountains. I'm Clayton Morris.
I'm Natali Morris.
And on this show, we cover the stories the mainstream media largely ignores or, piles a huge pile of propaganda on top of, and we try to navigate through it together, this crazy clown world. So thank you guys for joining us. Let us know where you're joining us from around the world. We have a busy show for you today. We're going to look at the latest emergency in California and 10 million people under a warning right now as these 100-mile-an-hour wind gusts are really the thing that are scaring a lot of people, because even firefighters out there dealing with 55-mile-an-hour winds, when they get up to 100 miles an hour, no aircraft, of course, and these blazes are just out of control. We have a new round of arson, too, to talk about on the show.
Right, and the National Weather Service issuing, what are they calling it, explosive warnings, that these could get explosive as if they weren't already. Now, it's worth noting, and we have the proof, that the National Weather Service issued the first warning about these extreme fire risks on January 2nd.
Convenient.
January 2nd. Nobody listened. We had to wait until catastrophe.
No, instead they went to Ghana.
Yeah,
maybe
we'll listen this time. We're going to show you the proof that liberal policies are failing before our very eyes, and they suck. We're going to show you absolute proof that they suck. All right, what else
also,
we're going to talk about? Yes.
I want to talk about, we're also going to talk about Tulsi Gabbard, because obviously we have 13 cabinet members that are about to be confirmed this week, of course, in Washington. So it's a very busy week for Trump's cabinet picks. Tulsi Gabbard, though, reversing course on the Section 702 of the FISA court. And this is a really interesting discussion, one that I'm really upset about. And so why this massive flip-flop from Tulsi Gabbard on FISA? We're going to talk about that.
Also, we're going to talk about Bridget Macron trending, what new evidence may or may not exist. Not just whether or not she's a man, which is one part of it, but did she actually abuse Emmanuel Macron? Assault? You know the word with a grape without a G?
Yeah. At
the age of 15? Why does this matter? We're going to talk about,
Emmanuel Macron. Can't wait for that.
Sexual trafficking victim.
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to say that in other ways. Also, Democrats secured that convicted felon title for Donald Trump, like they've been trying so hard to do for 8 years. We're going to have Lionel from Lionel Media on. He's a legal advisor. He's a prosecutor. He's a constitutionalist. Does it matter? Is it going to stick? Does it mean the rest of us don't have rights if he doesn't? So that's an important conversation to continue to have.
Alex says, I have a beef with Europe. Alex Bunda says, Clayton has a beef with Europe.
We have a beef with everybody.
I have a beef with anyone who wants to rip off the United States. I have a beef. I have a beef with Europe clamping down on freedoms and going after journalists.
Yeah.
And we have a lot of journalist friends, independent journalists who are excellent, who've received letters from the German government, the UK government. So there's a lot to be upset about with Europe. We'll talk.
Let me tell you something about Europe. Americans, we romanticize the food and the makeup and the butter. We think Europe has so much figured out that we don't. Healthcare, yes, is more affordable there. But once you've lived there, we lived as expats for 5 years, you realize that in America, at least we have litigation and we have routes to protect our freedoms. In Europe, they just take them. They are monitoring your WhatsApp. If you live in Europe, they are clamping down on your internet. It's just happening. You don't have any rights to speak back about it. So, if you want to romanticize skincare, go right ahead and do it. Is that more important to you than your freedom? I say this as someone who lived there, so you can kiss my European you-know-what. How about that?
You can kiss your U.S. ass. All right, let's get into it, shall we? We're going to get to the news in just a second. As we dive, though, into 2025 here on Redacted, we're all about recharging, preparing for what's ahead. Quality sleep is the key, and GhostBed, the sleep experts for over 20 years, are here to help you. With cooling technology, unmatched comfort, mattresses designed for every sleeper, GhostBed ensures that you wake up ready to conquer the day. Finding your dream mattress is easy with GhostBed. Whether you're a side sleeper, a back sleeper, somewhere in between, they've got you covered. Their GhostBed Luxe helps keep hot sleepers cool all night, while the GhostBed Flex balances memory foam and coils for the perfect support. Not sure where to start? You can take their quiz. Just go to their website and you can actually figure it out. They'll give you personalized recommendations right now. And new listeners get 50% off. Yes, if you use the code Redacted, you'll get 50% off site-wide. Fast, free shipping means your mattress arrives in just 2 to 5 days. So upgrade your sleep. Go to ghostbed.com. redacted and use that code redacted. That's ghostbed.com/redacted. Code redacted for 50% off.
I also want to say about that while we're talking about Europe, we love Europe. We love Europeans. We want them to have
freedoms.
We want them to have more freedoms. We want them to have more options. We want their governments to stop torturing them so that they don't live in such misery. That's what we want for Europe. So
is that too much to ask?
Yeah. So it's not like we don't like Europe, the continent, or the culture of various European nations. We love all of those things. All of them. Okay.
We will say that.
All right. Well, right now, 10 million people are under fire warnings that could lead to mass evacuations. More in California, wind warnings of up to 100 miles per hour across Southern California. Now, these people join all those who have already been evacuated for all of these fires. 38,000 acres combined, and the death toll right now around 24 and rising every day. Now we have a visualization from CBS News of how these fires spread. Here is a map put together by the local CBS News.
Yeah, so take a look at this. You can see the Palisades fire where it started on January 7th, expanding here just from 2,900 acres initially. January 8th, look at it moving back over the hillside there. Absolutely devastating. January 8th, further that night, just climbing up that hill. It's just horrible to look at.
This is exactly what we've experienced, this rapid spread, and it's expected to continue to go. Right now, the numbers, the estimates of just the Palisades fire being contained are between 10 and 15%, with conditions expected to worsen. Now, the National Weather Service has predicted, they're calling this explosive fire growth. That's not a word you want to see with a fire that is not contained, has killed dozens, and is continuing to claim people's entire lives. Keyword here, explosive. Now, something we don't want to hear, again, since these fires have not been contained. Now, here's the National Weather Service this week, again, warning of red flag conditions in Southern California that could make the fire situation worse. Okay, this one probably we're going to take pretty seriously, but let's rewind the clock 10 days before these massive fires broke out. And we actually did have a warning from them on January 2nd. That looked like this: potential fire risk, Santa Ana winds. All the things we now knew contributed to this was in fact warned about with extreme fire conditions on August 2nd. The next day, Los Angeles Mayor Bass flew to Ghana, even though she said she would not travel abroad if she was elected as mayor. The New York Times called her out for this over the weekend. From a 2021 interview with the Times, she said that if she was elected mayor, not only would I, of course, live here, but I would also not travel internationally. The only places I would go would be D.C., Sacramento, San Francisco, and New York in relation to L.A. So why the heck did she go to Ghana? And in fact, she's been abroad 5 times since being elected. She went to the Mexican president's inauguration. 3 times she went to the Olympics in France. And then, of course, to Ghana the day after this massive warning. Instead of monitoring the situation or warning residents or checking in on the water supply or anything of the sort, nope, she thought, that's nice. Got my passport ready, bye. She did not think that the Weather Service warning was serious enough, I guess, to cancel that trip. Now, Gavin Newsom also wasn't focused on this warning either, because his office issued this press release about processed foods the day after that warning. So they were not warning residents. They were not monitoring. Journalist Michael Schellenberger, who covers Newsom's constant efforts to destroy the ecosystem in the state under the name of environmentalist, he says that Newsom could have sent up helicopters to put out small fires to make sure it didn't come to this. Nobody did anything except sit and wait, and thus that's why we are here. Now, there's speculation that this fire was started by fireworks after New Year's Eve. We don't know that yet. We do know arson is a problem, not just now because of opportunists who want to light fires and then loot anyone who is evacuated. Arson is a problem because of illegal immigration and because of homelessness. And we're going to prove that to you in a second. But there was a man who was arrested late last week with proof that he was trying to start a fire. And now we know that he was, of course, an illegal immigrant. That's been confirmed by ICE, the Immigration and Customs Enforcement. They identified him as a Mexican national who is in the United States illegally. He was tackled by Southern Californian residents not the police, as he was trying to start a fire with a blowtorch. In the video, you can't hear it here, but they're saying you need to stop this. And he continues to say, I'm going to do this. Yes, I'm going to do this. He's literally caught red-handed with a blowtorch, but he's being held right now on a felony probation violation. But since California is a sanctuary state, ICE told Fox News that they can't detain him for long because City Council passed an ordinance last November that prohibits the use of city resources and personnel to carry out federal immigration enforcement. They cannot deport him. They cannot hold him. He's here illegally. He's allowed to start fires. It's totally cool. Can you imagine living in Los Angeles and knowing that your taxpayers have to support this guy who is trying to set your neighborhood on fire, your entire city on fire? He will appear in court today, but they say they don't have enough evidence and probable cause to charge him with arson, despite the video that you just watched where he's holding a blowtorch. That's not enough evidence.
I mean, let's be fair. How often, I mean, we all are guilty of just walking down the street with an active blowtorch. Just
with a blowtorch. Yeah.
In the middle of a massive fire problem. Yeah.
I carry a flamethrower.
Yeah.
But
you have a massive jetpack like size flamethrower.
Mm-hmm.
You just bring out occasionally when you want to clear some brush on your way to work.
Caddyshack too. I do that. Yes. Another video.
Rambo.
So another video is making the rounds now of another homeless person in Southern California who looks like he's about to start a fire. Although he says he's trying to put it out after he says, no, actually, I was just trying to stay warm. When he's confronted, clearly this is a person who is half a bubble off plum, if you know what I mean. You can watch for yourself.
Hey, brother, why you do this, bro? Nah, bro, you going to jail, bro. Oh, the whole trash can on fire, bro. Who did it then? Who did it? Who did it?
You did what? You did just.
He's trying to put it out.
That's what he
looks
says.
like a firefighter. I tried to put it out, man.
But then he says, actually, I was just trying to keep warm. Like I said, he's not dealing with a full deck of cards, this person, clearly. Now, whether or not they're doing this, either criminals or homeless people or immigrants, whether they're doing this because they want to stay warm or because they're opportunists and they want to evacuate neighborhoods so that they can rob them, it almost doesn't matter. Michael Schellenberger has been pointing this out for a long time, that homeless people start fires in a place where there's a fire hazard, but California legislators won't admit it. They have a homeless population that they have allowed to explode, and that is a fire risk. Watch.
And instead of emptying the prisons and jails, subsidizing rampant homelessness, eliminating penalties for breaking the law, and allowing addicts, the mentally ill, and others to camp everywhere and start fires, Newsom and Bass should have cracked down on the rampant disorder and violent crime, all of which have skyrocketed under their misrule. It now appears that at least one of the fires was started by a homeless man. And whether or not that proves to be the case, over half of all fires put out by the LA Fire Department are started by the homeless, which has diverted the agency from doing what it should have been doing, which was to prevent catastrophic fires, including by putting them out as soon as they start.
Okay, half of fires that LAPD is busy concerning themselves with are fires started on the street by the homeless population that has been allowed to run rampant under Democratic legislators. Can these policies fail any harder in full view? What does it take, Californians, to turn against these liberal idiots? You tell me why this is acceptable. I really need to understand why you would see this and be like, it's not Democrats' fault.
Do you need Gavin Newsom to come to your house and shoot your pets? Like, would that be the catalyst?
Right.
You finally wake up?
What exactly about this is acceptable? You pay high taxes, you subsidize homeless people, they start fires, you allow the fire department to cut their budget, focus on DEI, empty the water.
You vote for water bonds that are 14 years back in 2014 that still haven't been implemented to actually save your communities. You voted for reservoirs. You voted for all of this. And
you allow Gavin Newsom to turn off your nuclear power plants, which would allow you to continue to run these reservoirs efficiently and desalinate water. You want none of this? You're totally cool. You're just going to vote for a different Democrat? I need to understand the mental gymnastics that would allow you to say this is acceptable.
You also said subsidizing homeless people, but you're also subsidizing massive amounts of illegal immigrants, of course, with sanctuary cities and the illegal immigrants who've been caught on camera now committing arson that we can't do anything about because of these sanctuary laws in the state. We'll get to more of that in a second. By the way, let's talk about smart meters, shall we? PG&E smart meters could be partially to blame in all of this. For catching fire, sending homes up in flames. That's what many Californians are saying today with their large lithium-ion batteries that are inside of these smart meters. Maybe they've come out to your house and said, hey, do you want to upgrade? We're going to upgrade your house to a smart meter. And a lot of people saying, don't. Absolutely don't do this. Don't agree to it. You'll have to pay for them to come out once a month and check your meter now with one of those old manual sort of analog meters. But the problem with these smart meters is, well, they can go up in flames. That's the problem. And there's historical precedent for it, by the way. And PG&E has faced massive lawsuits because of these smart meters starting house fires. When there was no other fire around, these things going up in smoke. And it happens. Just take a look at this. Is an example of these smart meters because of the flow of electricity to the house and these lithium-ion batteries, which are massively incendiary. You can see them sparking and going off here. And dozens of people have blamed smart meters for fires over the last several years in California. The issue has been a topic of discussion in front of the California Public Utilities Commission. Now, they came along and said, we don't see enough evidence to support that was the cause of it. Well, PG&E still had to deal with massive lawsuits around this, and they ended up having to pay up big time because of it. One man and a fire chief claimed that at one house when one was on fire, a PG&E employee just like showed up while the fire chief was there. Like the PG&E truck rolls up, and the PG&E employee goes over and removes the burnt like smart meter from the house. He's like, evidence?
This was never here.
Let me take this home with me, and you didn't even see me. I'm going away. Bye, PG&E guy.
I wonder if he replaced it with something else. Did he replace it with something else, or did he just like they're just like, this is weird. There's no meter on this house.
What
never was.
To the meter? Put back one of those old manual ones again. Let me be right. Or he put up like a faux Lego one, just like a Lego version of it. You know.
Okay.
It'd be all like brand new with all the scorch marks behind it. Like we don't know where the fire came from. Definitely not this brand new electric meter.
Exactly. So this PG&E employee arrived on the scene and removed the smart meter from the house. Don't take my word for it. Take ABC News, who actually did the reporting on this. Watch.
Tens of thousands in damage, and firefighters determined this is where it started. A few months later, in September 2015, another fire started in a similar spot at this fireball home. And Jose Valdez says he had a sinking suspicion that day.
A month before the house caught on fire, PG&E had came and left us a little flyer saying they were going to come out and install a new smart meter in our house.
Valdez says he and his family cleared out of the house safely, and they could only watch the flames spread from the side of their garage.
This is the charge for my neighbor's car that was burned here.
While firefighters doused the house in water, they say they also noticed several people from PG&E. Valdez says one of them removed the smart meter while the house was still burning. Fireboss fire chief saw the same thing, and he says his investigation concluded the fire was most likely caused by a problem in the electrical panel.
And that problem with an electrical panel, in my belief, was the smart meter that was installed in the panel by PG&E.
Oh, yeah, I don't see the humor in it either, like as someone in our chat said. Literally shows up while the house is on fire. So they knew what was going on. They went and removed the meter to try to hide the evidence.
Well, the smart meter told them.
Right.
This house is on fire. Go get me out of here.
So why would they do that? California is saying the homes without smart meters haven't burned down at nearly the level that homes outfitted with these smart meters have. Here is Matt Landman, who posted this. Smart meters have lithium-ion batteries. When these batteries catch fire, they have what's called thermal runaway, where they will go from 140 degrees Fahrenheit to 6,000 degrees Fahrenheit in just a few seconds. The smart meter is connected to the copper wiring of the home, which is designed to travel electricity due to its conductivity. Along with being conductive, the copper wires are also great at heat transfer via convection. So when these supposed forest fires hit neighborhoods but burn more homes than trees, the culprit in the usual fire forensics looks to be the lithium-ion batteries. It's no wonder these homes are burned to dust while trees are standing within feet of the houses. These homes are burning from the inside out. Literally, the copper wires in the homes are insulated, carrying extreme heat to every corner of the home. Welcome to Agenda 2030. he says. And here's an example of one of those houses. Watch.
This right here, that's a smart meter going off and catching fire.
So I talked to the owner of this house right here in Pasadena. I talked to the owner. The owner does not have a smart meter on this house, on the front part of his house. There's no smart meter, no smart meter. So the house did not burn. The back house is the part of the house that had the smart meter, and everything in the back of his house is burnt. No smart meter, smart meter.
Someone in the chat says, I believe the smart meters burnt down. John Butterball Sr. says, I believe smart meters burned Paradise, California. Yeah, John, you're correct. You're one step ahead of me here. In fact, manslaughter. PG&E pled guilty to 84 counts of manslaughter in the fire that devastated Paradise, California. And they had to basically plead guilty to 84 counts of manslaughter in that 2018 wildfire that devastated the town. So now leave it to politicians, of course, to turn tragedy into a cash grab. California Governor Gavin Newsom just set a new low in exploiting this disaster. I don't know if you've seen his tweets over the past couple of hours or past couple of days. He's been pushing people to go to a California wildfire, CaliforniaFireFacts.com, which basically redirects right to GavinNewsom.com. And he's encouraging people to go there. He took to Twitter to basically ask for donations to support fire relief efforts. Okay, but here's the kicker. The donations are actually routed through his own super PAC, according to the New York Post. So anyone who clicks the link to help fire victims isn't just giving money. They're being added to a prized email list that then Newsom's super PAC can then milk for political donations and profit from data sharing operations. Sleazy.
Unbelievable.
Absolutely it is. But not surprising at all from Gavin Newsom. It gets worse, though. The fundraising platform that Newsom used is called Act Blue. Skims a flat three. Remember Act Blue? Have you heard all about Act Blue under James O'Keefe's operation and uncovering the shadiness there? They skim a flat 3.95%, basically almost a 4% fee off of every donation. So you donate through this super PAC basically set up that Gavin Newsom has structured, Act Blue. The Democrats make almost 4% off of every donation, which then goes to line their pockets. It goes to push like anti-Trump policies. It goes to push progressive agendas. It's not helping fire victims. It's disgusting. And they don't, openly admit this, of course. That means money intended to help fire victims basically ends up bankrolling Democratic candidates in the state of California and around the country. And agendas, including those pushing for foreign wars and destabilizing entire regions around the world. So do you think you're helping California fire victims? It's just disgusting. Meanwhile, the fire crisis in California has claimed 24 lives. Families are grieving. Communities are shattered. Instead of ensuring that every penny goes to these relief efforts, Newsom's fundraiser could divert these funds to political campaigns. And here's Gavin Newsom in this interview now. Of course, a lot of people are making a big deal out of this, myself included, that we were all concerned about, well, what is going to happen to these cities once the rebuilding starts? Was it planned for like 15-minute cities, massive restructuring of California, land grabs by real estate developers and so forth for people that didn't want to move or whatever? So here Gavin Newsom on Meet the Press is discussing his plans for California 2.0. He basically already has a Marshall Plan in place, which we'll talk about in a second. Watch.
The opportunity, I think, to rebuild at the same time. And that's why we're already organizing a Marshall Plan. We already have a team looking and reimagining LA 2.0. And we're making sure everyone's included, not just the folks on the coast.
Yeah, everyone. So we got a Marshall Plan in 1948 to rebuild Europe after World War II, of course. And, we know what happened there, of course, basically under the thumb of the United States for decades to come and currently. And the amount of money that needed to be paid back to the United States, of course, the amount of debt that the UK had to the United States up until, I think, just a few years ago for this rebuilding effort under this Marshall Plan. Some are calling it a martial law plan, not like John Marshall. And so rebuilding these cities, these sort of 15-minute cities, these new smart cities. What is LA 2.0? And by the way, you already had a team? Like you have a team ready to go? You have a team that's already reimagining?
You didn't under the threat of fire, but once everything's burned down, you have an expertise.
You have a Marshall Plan in place. All right, more news to get to here in a second.
But first, we want to tell you about our friends over at Buy Optimizers because, of course, with the holidays behind us, we know that the start of the year can be stressful, hitting your New Year's goals. That's why we want to tell you about Magnesium Breakthrough from Buy Optimizers, because this isn't your average magnesium supplement. It contains the full spectrum of 7 proven forms of magnesium to target every system in your body. And most health experts agree that magnesium is essential for managing all bodily functions, managing stress, maintaining calm, balanced mood, also helping with fatigue, helping with optimal sleep. So Magnesium Breakthrough has a unique blend of magnesium citrate, glycinate, and taurate, and ensures maximum absorption and utilization by your cells. This is a comprehensive formula that supports everything from relaxation to energy production, so you can power through this new year with your goals without burning out. So for an exclusive offer, head on over to buyoptimizers.com/redacted. Use our code redacted and you'll get 10% off at checkout. One more time, that's buyoptimizers.com/redacted. Use our code redacted, get 10% off. We thank them so much for supporting independent journalism.
Indeed. Well, a big middle finger to the American people. Tulsi Gabbard just did an about face on her push to stop FISA, F-I-S-A, and specifically Section 702. Now, she's pledged to support the warrantless spying on Americans. Wait, what? Why now? What happened? What the hell happened? This is really disappointing for supporters of like ourselves who've supported Tulsi Gabbard as head of DNI. We've called out, of course, the money that she's taken from the Israel lobby. But overall, we've been excited for her to be a part of this. I just finished reading her book over the holidays, and there's a lot to love about her. But this massive flip-flop on FISA is deeply, deeply concerning. So as Caitlin Johnstone says, quote, once you step into the machinery of power, it's not uncommon to see initial opposition to the imperial status quo, be it surveillance, authoritarianism, or military intervention, she says, morph into support for those very practices. The system either excludes dissenters or it compels them to adapt. So is that what happened here? What do you guys think? I'll ask you guys who are watching right now. Do you think that once she got in there, in order to be confirmed, she sort of, bent the knee, said, I'm gonna support this. I'm gonna support the surveillance state. Even though while she was in Congress, she said absolutely not. So now Tulsi is pledging to support Section 702 of the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act as part of her efforts to secure confirmation as Biden's top pick for the Director of National Intelligence. And just to be clear, this highly controversial provision allows for the warrantless surveillance of Americans,
which she herself has said she's been a victim of.
Yes. I mean, with the NSA spying on her and actually putting her on a list. Yes. You think, okay, this is the person you want to go in there and clean house on this stuff.
Right. And as she promised she would.
It's like Stockholm syndrome. Like, seriously, like she just got so close to it all that now she wants the bad things. I don't get it.
It infringes on American civil liberties. Like, this is a full stop for me. It's a full stop for us here on this show. I don't want to speak for my wife, but it's a full stop for me.
You don't?
I don't want to speak for you. Unless I need to. During her time in Congress, Gabbard was a vocal opponent of the law, advocating vociferously for its repeal. And she gives some great speeches on it, by the way. So I just don't understand what's going on here. We spoke with former FBI whistleblower Kyle Seraphin, who's made it he was kicked out of the FBI for blowing the whistle on this very program and the warrantless surveillance of Americans and raising red flags about what the FBI is doing. The FBI ruined his life for calling attention to this. And he specifically is focused on 702 of FISA. He's made his mission to educate people about this. He's been doing a great job. So listen to how he describes how nefarious this is.
The NSA's database of 702 data, which is literally me looking into your email box. People have to understand what raw FISA is. It's exactly what you see. I get your spam. I get the notes back and forth to your mom. I get the notes that you and your wife are exchanging, which is otherwise privileged material, and your lawyers. I see all of it raw with no filter. And then I, as an FBI agent, have to decide whether or not it is, in fact, something that I have to, quote unquote, minimize And I'll just tell you, as someone who did this for 2 years in a skiff working against the Chinese threat, I have a pretty high IQ. I'm a better than average learner. And I sat in that skiff and I thought I was minimizing things appropriately by using the protocols that were taught to me. By the way, I had a native Chinese speaking agent as a training agent who didn't know how to use the programs either. And it didn't seem like anybody on my squad knew how to use them. So when they did a FISA audit of me on my squad about what I had been doing with 702 FISA, I failed it miserably. And so did everybody else because we weren't minimizing it properly, because it doesn't even do the thing you think. When you click through the minimization process, it doesn't result in it actually doing the thing that it's supposed to do within that software.
He's right. So Section 702, which was first enacted in 2008, permits U.S. intelligence agencies to collect and monitor the communications of foreign targets without a warrant, of course, even if those communications incidentally, though, involve Americans. Privacy advocates have long called for its repeal because it's overly broad, citing abuses, massive overreach. So why this reversal from Tulsi? It's deeply troubling. It's clear that this move underscores the influence of the national security state. Right? Someone's like, what do you mean by bent the knee? Well, it's like when you go before a king and you get down on one knee and you like bow in front of them. Like, what's going on here? Is that exactly what she did? Who knows? So I'm just stunned that she's had this massive reversal.
All right, let's talk about the Macrons. I just want to say I don't like this story.
I love it.
It's gross. It's weird. It may, though, be important because it is yet more proof that liberal leaders are perverts.
Yes.
Which we seem to uncover all the time. Right. And so that's why we're going to do it. You like it?
I love it.
Okay.
Because every time I see a picture of Brigitte Macron, I'm like, no woman walks around like that. No woman sits like that. What's going on here with this story? Like, it's the most bizarre. Anyway, go ahead. Just to get into it. Yeah. No more.
I could defend
editorializing.
That. We won't. Okay, let's look at what the news is. Okay, the news is that Candace Owens says she's been threatened with litigation by French President Emmanuel Macron and his wife Brigitte Macron because Owens says she has evidence that the First Lady is a biological man who raped Emmanuel Macron when he was 15 years old. This post where she exposes that has been viewed at least 12 million times, and it's trending in France. It's not trending in the United States. We got a lot to deal with, but it is big news in France because it could be the scandal of a decade with a leader who has, tanked their economy, repealed freedom to say a man is a man and a woman is a woman, supported death in Ukraine, endless wars, right? I don't think most of us would agree that Emmanuel Macron is an excellent leader. And why is he this terrible leader? Could it be because he has these skeletons in his closet? That's where we're going with this, right? So what she says here is that she has interviewed a French journalist at length who has copious research showing that Brigitte Macron was born a man and changed to Brigitte Macron. Not only that, but how her relationship started with Emmanuel Macron when he was her student. She was in her mid-30s and he was only 15 at the time. The way that the Macrons have presented their story is that, yes, they met when he was a 15-year-old high school student. Yes, she was the teacher, but they waited until he was 17, as if that was better, until they started a consensual relationship, and then they got married when he was in his 20s. So she's still at least a decade and a half older than him, but they've sort of presented a different story. But in their letter to Candace Owens, they say that in fact, their relationship was legal and consensual because he was 15 at the time. That not only changes the story, but it's untrue because of the teacher-student relationship. Now, she says that she's being pressured by this threatening letter. She's being threatened because they don't want her to release this expose, which she is still planning to release at the end of January. Here she is explaining how this... So let's set aside whether or not Brigitte Macron is a biological man, but this age of consent is also an explosive revelation and breaks apart what they said on the campaign trail. Watch Candace Owens explain this.
What on earth were they thinking, including that? Okay. But here's where it gets really interesting. Okay. Then they insist on explaining to me that calling someone a rapist in France, they have different laws, and they insist that it's not statutory rape because Emmanuel was or would have been 15. They heavily imply this. This is the exact verbiage from the letter. It reads, Mrs. Macron did not statutorily rape President Macron. Let us be clear that the age of consent in France is 15. The two met and fell in love in 1993 when she was a drama teacher and he was 15 years old. When President Macron was 17, he vowed to marry Mrs. Macron, following through with his promise. They wed in 2007 when President Macron was 29 years old. Now, I want to first let you guys know that this is stunning because all throughout the time that President Macron was running, their story was that he was 17 years old. Okay. Now we have here writing that they're now adjusting that. All the publications said, oh, he was 17. It makes him sound like he's almost legal. And she was, however, I think they said she was 34. And one of the things that we told you was that this whole legend that they created in the legacy media was dishonest, and they allowed this to go on until people started looking, independent journalists, and going, wait a second, Emmanuel Macron was not 15. And I also believe there's an interview where Emmanuel Macron states that he met her before he was 15 years old. But them implying that the age of consent in France is 15 is actually wholesale dishonesty, because what they're leaving out is the age of consent at that time when they were together was 15 only if the person that they had the affair with, the sexual affair with, was not someone who had any power or control. That is still the law in France today, okay? So in order for it to be age of consent, it cannot be a teacher, it cannot be a therapist, it cannot be any person when you are a minor that has control over you. And as they mentioned in that same paragraph, Emmanuel Macron was the student of Brigitte Macron. So that would not have been allowed under the law. And this is something that we are happy to debate. In America, this would be statutory rape one way or the other. And in France, I'm pretty sure that still constitutes statutory rape. But we will allow you to respond to that in a more thorough manner, because now that we've established a connection, you have no excuse not to answer our pointed questions.
Okay.
Ouch.
Now, something that she points out in this video, which is about 20 minutes or so, she says, the Macrons have repeatedly attacked journalists for exposing this or looking into it, but they have not put any effort into proving it, that she's a biological woman. So where are the pictures of her pregnant with her children? Where are pictures of her, as a baby, or medical records or what have you? She says they only attack the sources as if they can tamp out the fire instead of actually proving it, when this is something that could be proven and done with, and that they're not doing it. And that's one of the reasons that Macron is so and it is so committed to closing X in France. So
they've already blocked Rumble in France.
Right.
So, they really want to clamp down on free speech. Anyone who wants to expose the corruption and the sleaziness of the Macron legacy, Rumble gets shut down in France. X, they're trying great lengths to try to stop as well.
Yeah.
How many other social media platforms, I don't know, that they're going after.
Right. So it's much less about whether or not she looks mannish. There's a lot of women that look mannish. I don't care about that. I do absolutely care if this is some grooming scandal that has given us this leader that has tanked an economy and for lack of a better word, done his people wrong because he's ideologically captured by perverts. So that in and of itself, like, no 15-year-old should be dating their 30-something-year-old teacher. I think we should pretty much all agree on that, right?
I'm just laughing because Baron Saturday says, Einhorn is Finkel. Finkel is Einhorn. Einhorn is...
I get what you're saying.
Ace Ventura reference.
That's pretty good.
Is always welcome.
Pretty good.
On the show.
Pretty good.
All right, we've got more news to get to. Joining us next, I'm really excited, is Kaizen Asiedu. Now, Kaizen went viral last week for his posts about Los Angeles and the fires. Fortunately, he was able to escape that area and get to safety. Kaizen's going to join us from Temecula, California, to talk about these liberal policies and And it's amazing because I think Kaizen has admitted that he woke up. He was back in the day, he was a liberal, and he voted for Trump because of the destruction of California under liberal policies and what it has looked like in the United States of America. So we're going to talk with him in a moment. But first, we want to tell you about American financing, because a lot of us are trying to get our finances in order to start the year off right. And interest rates are starting to drop finally now that the Federal Reserve has allowed it. So if you've been buried in high interest credit card debt, right now is a good time to break free. American Financing can help you access the cash in your home equity to pay off your high interest debt. This is a trick that wealthy people know, is you take bad debt and leverage it for good debt so that you can build your assets instead of continuing to invest in liabilities. Last year, their salary-based mortgage consultants helped their customers save an average of $800 a month. That's like giving yourself a $10,000 a year raise. So what a great way to start the new year. And you can start today and possibly delay 1 or 2 mortgage payments. So you can call them at American Financing. You can call them at 866-890-8434 or go to americanfinancing.net/redacted. They'll give you a personalized consultation and all the reading material so you can understand what you're doing. And again, this is just something that you should learn to do, whether it works for you now or later. And take this as something that you can study in your house and see if it works for you. Head on over to americanfinancing.net/redacted or call them one more time. That's americanfinancing.net/redacted. Well, an illegal immigrant caught setting fires in California. And guess what? ICE says they can't hold him. You can't make this up. Really, I mean, it's like, truth is stranger than fiction. And things are expected to get much worse with return of 100-mile-an-hour winds today, which basically means there's nothing that firefighters can really do to stop it. Aircraft can't fly. Firefighters can't battle these blazes with these Santa Ana winds that high. But don't worry, Gavin Newsom, of course, says he's going to start cutting red tape and regulation so that Californians can rebuild as quickly as possible. He's excited right now for California 2.0, as he's calling it. He just tweeted this: just issued an executive order that will allow victims of the SoCal fires to not get caught up in bureaucratic red tape and quickly rebuild their homes. Right. Well, what about all the liberal red tape that led to their homes being burned down in the first place? Like, where were you when that was all happening? Someone who's called out these policies from the beginning is Kaizen Asiedu. He last week, this video went viral for calling out these failed liberal policies. Watch.
Last night, I had to evacuate my home in LA because of the fires, the effects of which you can see right above me. Upon reflecting, I remembered a conversation that Joe Rogan had with Donald Trump before the election about the state of wildfire management in California. It's very easy to think of wildfires as something that Mother Nature just inflicts upon us, but we have an influence over both the intensity and the frequency of these fires. And Donald Trump pointed out that there's 2 things that we've done in California that might be exaggerating the effects of these fires. The first is our policy around water management, and the second is our policy around clearing deadwood in our forests.
And Kaizen joins us now from California. He's managed to get out of that area and is safe, but he is calling attention to all of these failed liberal policies and what it has done to the state of California. Kaizen, welcome to the show. Thanks so much for joining us. Thanks for having me. So when you see Gavin Newsom making these statements about now they're going to start cutting red tape, he's excited about California 2.0. We're going to rebuild. We have a Marshall Plan in place. It almost sounds like a lot of this was strategic and kind of planned from the beginning, and these liberal policies really led to this disaster. I mean, you've been calling this out, right?
Yeah, you know, the problem is when there's so much incompetence, it becomes hard to distinguish that from malevolence. So people start to reasonably wonder, hey, was this planned or are you just that incompetent? And it's scarier to consider that it's planned. It's safer to consider that they're just incompetent. But regardless, the solution is the same. We need competent, accountable leaders. And honestly, I think a lot of this, for me personally, would go over better from Gavin Newsom if he just acknowledged, hey, I messed up and I'm sorry. And there's things that I need to do better. But instead, what I see him doing is picking fights with Trump on X and picking fights with Elon, who is sending Starlinks and Cybertrucks of his own volition to help out with connectivity for the firefighters. I see him talking about misinformation and complaining about misinformation and doing press interviews and going on podcasts. And not a single time have I heard him just say, hey, look, I am the head of state in California. There are things I clearly overlooked here. I am the person who the buck stops with, and I'm going to do better. And if I saw that, then it would be easy for me to be like, okay, you know what? Being a governor is actually a very difficult job. There's no world where 100% of the people are going to approve of what you did, but at least I can see a culture of growth and humility. But I'm not seeing that at all. So I totally understand why some people speculate that this is planned. I try to remain agnostic on this stuff because I genuinely don't know. What I do know is that the actions that have been taken are not the actions that we need.
Right. You've called out a series of policies which have gotten us here. So these are facts. These are on the books. And there's empty reservoirs. There's a water bond that hasn't been fulfilled that California voters voted for. There's incompetence up and down the line. Can you just talk about some of the incompetence for people who are like outside of California might not understand how bad it's been? These are facts. This is not like emotion talking here. These are facts, right?
Yeah, exactly. So there's several issues going on here. One, the fire hydrants that were needed in the Pacific Palisades fire specifically, many of them were dry. Now, there's a few factors going on. Some people have said water shortage. I don't think it's as simple as that. But basically, our urban water infrastructure is not designed to accommodate infernos of this magnitude. And here's the thing. It's like, a lot of these leftist politicians keep on saying climate change is such a big problem. Climate change is going to kill us. Climate change is something we need to get under control. And it's true that the climate is changing and we need to adapt. But to the extent that that's true, they haven't adapted properly. So you can't say on one hand, the conditions are not favorable. And on the other hand, we haven't prepared properly for the conditions. So when our firefighters are going to fire hydrants and they're dry, or we have dead trees on our forest floors, which are highly flammable material, leading to these infernos becoming much more disastrous than they need to. And we have our fire departments not only understaffed and under budget, but spending money on policies that are just not the priority, like diversity, equity, and inclusion. I look at this issue and I say, okay, well, this fire probably was not preventable because it was a perfect storm. You know, we are dealing with 100-mile-per-hour winds. It is an extreme situation, but even extreme situations that have a 10 out of 10 level of destruction could be brought down to maybe an 8 or a 7 through diligent policy. And I think what's pretty clear, hopefully is what's clear to people who are paying attention, is that these policies are not policies but prepare us the best for these conditions. And, you know, one of the videos that I made that went viral was about the Delta smelt, which is this endangered fish that is in the San Joaquin Delta, and how there was an environmental lobby and conservationists who wanted to redirect fresh water away from that fish in order to protect the fish. But that led to us dumping nearly 200 billion gallons of water into the Pacific Ocean. And that's water with a monetary value. That's water that we can use to fill reservoirs. And I look at that, it's like, that's not the direct cause of these fires, and no one is disputing that. And in fact, we can even argue that if we still had that 200 billion gallons of water, we couldn't have channeled it through the infrastructure quickly enough to the fire hydrants. Okay, but it's indicative of a worldview where the priorities are just completely out of whack. That's the core problem here. These politicians are focusing on political talking points and what sounds good, like we need to have a diverse workforce, and we need to have a head of equity at LAFD, and we need to focus on all these things that are just not the most important thing. And I'm not saying they're not important to anyone. Like, of course, we would love to have an LA fire department that is diverse if that doesn't sacrifice merit. But right now, we're in a situation where we're not dealing with the core safety needs. We're not laser focused on merit, and everyone's safety is being compromised, black, brown, yellow, or everything in between.
Right. If your house is on fire, do you care if the person coming to save you looks like you, acts like you, votes like you?
No, I care that they can, if I'm crippled, pick me up and get me out of the fire. I care that they're the best person in LA to do the job. I care that we know that they've been trained and they're properly funded and that they trust everyone on the team around them. That's what I care about. And if they're also diverse while also meeting those sets of criteria, great. But the skepticism among me and many other Californians about whether even that's the case.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I'm 6'2". If someone that comes to my house looks like Shaquille O'Neal to save me, I'm like, fabulous, wonderful. You could probably pick up all my family members and carry them out simultaneously. I'm all for that. I don't care what you look like. I want my house saved. And if you got the job based on merit, wonderful. But you're right. The policies in California have been so focused on DEI and diversity, equity, and inclusion that they've really destroyed. I mean, we're seeing this across the country. This is not just a California problem. Then we also have issues with illegal immigration, of course, in California. And now the reports, I saw your tweet today, said, let me get this straight. An illegal immigrant was arrested by citizens, not the police. That's a major problem. First of all, we see the citizens' arrest of one of these individuals who was setting a fire. That's a major problem right there. Then you said he was already on probation, meaning he had already been arrested before the LA fires by the police. Second big problem, right? During the LA fires, he was caught near a fire with a blowtorch. So these are policy problems. That's not climate change.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And when our government fails, citizens need to fill the gap. And that's when problems start to obtain. So, for example, a few months ago, we had the Daniel Penny, Jordan Neely situation. You remember on the New York City subway, there was a white Marine. He restrained a black homeless guy. People racialized it, but it was fundamentally a safety issue. And it's tragic that Jordan Neely died and the state failed him. And also, he was a guy who had been arrested 42 times. He had assaulted 3 women at or on the subway, and he was threatening to kill people on the subway. So if the law is not taking care of situations like this, then now citizens need to step in. And imagine if citizens had stepped in and then this illegal immigrant had gotten hurt or one of the citizens had gotten hurt. So it's just a failure the whole way through. And to see a situation like that where this guy is carrying a blowtorch, he just came from an area where a fire was happening, the police detain him and then release him because they say they don't have probable cause. Then the ICE needs to step in. ICE, we now find out, might have to release him back into the public because California has these sanctuary state laws protecting illegal immigrants who broke the law to get here. It endangers everyone, and it literally endangers the illegal immigrants too. So while that's happening, to see Gavin Newsom then say, okay, well, now I'm going to spend $50 million, which is about 3 times what LA Fire Department's budget got cut by the way,
right,
on protecting illegal immigrants from getting deported. It's insane. And it's like, look, even let's take the best case, the Castile man. If you think that this is squarely a climate change thing, like it's just climate change, this is unavoidable, do you look at the actions of Gavin Newsom and believe that he is best equipped to deal with climate change? Can you have any vote of confidence around the behaviors you've seen? So even if you agree that a lot of these, I would say far leftist politicians in California's far leftist politicians are right on the problems, I don't believe in their capacity to deliver solutions.
Hallelujah. Well said. What do you think the future looks like for California?
I can tell you what I hope it looks like, and then I can give you the pessimistic case. What I hope this is as tragic as it is a wake-up call for Californians, because Californians have been voting for these politicians who have been enacting these policies. And a lot of it has been based on superficial factors like race and identity and classism. And these politicians who just tell us what we want to hear, that yes, diversity is the most important thing. And yes, billionaires are evil and they are oppressing you, and I will save you from these evil rich people. And yes, we need to tax the rich and it's everyone else's fault except the politicians. I hope it's a wake-up call and be like, wait a second, these people just misdirect and deflect constantly. And it's time to wake up and stop voting radical left politicians into positions of authority where they don't deliver results and they make empty promises. That's what I hope happens, and that it's a renaissance in LA. Because I love California, man. I think California represents the inspirational and aspirational spirit of American dream. Like, you have a lot of dreamers here, a lot of people who are here because they know you can have one connection with a person that changes your life. That's amazing. We have some of the most amazing nature in the world. And we also have the worst government in the United States. So I hope people wake up to the fact that this doesn't have to be happening. There are always going to be problems, but we can have the best problem solvers in place. Unfortunately, another possibility here is that people buy this nonsense from politicians who keep on misdirecting blame and say that this is just about climate change, and they say, yeah, it's just about climate change, let me keep on voting these guys in because they are saying the sound bites that I like, and we're just going to keep on repeating this. I mean, we had another fire, Franklin fire, I think less than 2 months ago, right? And we're just going to keep on going through the same cycle. So that's a possibility too, but I'm hoping now, because of the transparency that X has brought us, the work of independent journalists like you, and the fact that we had an election of Trump, which I think has made it more culturally acceptable to consider views that are more moderate or even right. And I think, I don't consider myself left or right, but I think the right is more aligned with the truth right now. And that changes. I think George W. Bush was a terrible president, and we'll have terrible Republican presidents, right, too. But I think we're having a correction more to the center. And I know me, I voted liberal Democrat my whole life. 2016, I voted for Hillary. 2020, I voted for Biden. And this last year, in 2024, I woke up. And I hope that many other people wake up too.
Well, your message has been resonating with millions of people. So keep doing what you're doing and spreading the truth. And I hope it is a wake-up call. I hope that for a lot of people, sometimes you have these tipping point moments for people, right? Maybe it happened 20 years ago for you. It happened a few years ago. Maybe for a lot of people, it's happening right now. So I think we're moving towards an awakening period in the United States. I'm really, really hopeful. I'm glad you're safe, Kaizen. Thank you so much for your message. I think it resonates with millions of people. So thank you, and keep doing what you're doing.
Thank you.
Thanks. And thanks. I hope stay safe, because Kaizen just got there to Temecula, so he had to get out of he was staying at a friend's place there, I think. So
I really enjoy him on X, because I feel like I see all of these posts with people saying, how can we blame the government? It's nobody's fault. It's dry here. This is the way it is. How can you argue with what he just said about these policies that have exacerbated life for well-intentioned people? And you see these posts about, Hollywood is Sodom and Gomorrah. They deserve. Most victims did not. Obviously, most victims are paying incredibly high prices to live in a state that offers them nothing, unless you are an illegal immigrant or a homeless person. And how can you say that that's fine? Go ahead, Philip.
I was going to say, it would be the equivalent of if like a city policy was that the police only work the same as banking hours. And then if something happened after that, and people are like, well, I mean, bad things happen. We, just have to wait till morning for the police to clock in to show, there's a reason why policies exist to take care of problems that could potentially happen.
This is the social contract. That's what we're trying to point out to you, is you pay your taxes in order to receive these services. This is the social contract that has been broken by liberals. And if you don't think that, then you can keep voting for them. But I guess you don't demand very much so then you need to remember, you work for the government from January until May. That's all they take. They take all of your salary from January till May. And you think you can really not demand anything in return, then you're a slave.
Yeah, that's exactly true. And that's why Kaizen said it's time to wake up and stop voting for liberals in Los Angeles. A bunch of people in our chat said that Kaizen should run for governor of California.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would get behind that 100%. Another Phoenix 21 in our chat says, Clayton, this guy is awesome. You should invite him on again. Oh, we already have. We'd love to have Kaizen back on the show. So, just be honest. Let us know in the chat room right now. Like, when did you have your awakening? Was it 20 years ago? Was it 5 years ago? Was it last week? Was it today? When were you finally awakened to what's been actually going on with these elites, these globalists, and these liberal policies that have been destroying the United States? So let us know. I'd love to hear.
And it's not a binary. We're not here saying Republicans are solving the problems. Clearly, they're not.
Both parties are corrupt. And I love what he said. I love what Kaizen said about George W. Bush, one of the worst presidents we've ever had. Yeah. Absolutely. George W. Bush is a warmongering killer. He's horrible. Dick Cheney, all of those guys, those neocons. So 100% I agree with him on that.
Right. Yeah. All right. We have more news to get to. We're going to talk about Donald Trump and his new title of convicted felon. Democrats secured what they wanted. They've been salivating over it, and they got it last Friday. Will it last? We're going to talk to Lionel from Lionel Nation YouTube channel. But before we do that.
But yeah, right now, hey, it's a big week in Washington, D.C. Trump is lining up all of his cabinet appointments right now, 13 of them right now to go in front of the Congress to be confirmed or denied. We'll see how this all shakes out. Fireworks, of course, happening on Capitol Hill. Biden's terrible foreign policies, of course, have gotten us where we are right now. We're seeing mortgage rates going back up right now. Mortgage rates going up. We're seeing, of course, major concerns over inflation coming back, getting much worse right now. So I think we're in for a bumpy ride. That's why you're seeing a lot of central banks right now buying up as much gold and silver as they possibly can. And I know when people say like, well, where do you guys invest? How do you guys do it? We are big believers in tangible assets. So we love real estate. We love actual real items like gold and silver, precious metals. That's a big part of our portfolio for Natali and I. And our friends at Lear Capital, that's how we invest. We buy gold and silver from them. They're able to ship it right to our house, be able to store it in a gun safe or stored off-site in a secure location, which we also have. So you can do either of that. It's totally up to you. But also right now, they have a new report that they just published on 2025. So I would encourage all of you to check it out. Just go to their website. It's a free report. What's going to happen with tariffs? What's going to happen with gold and silver prices this year? What's happening with this massive silver shortage that we have? All of it. Just educate yourself. It's totally free. Go over to their website, learredacted.com, and just request that free report. You can also get on the phone with them. They're an American company, American patriots. They are not in some call center in Vietnam somewhere. You can speak to actual Americans, and they will walk you through the process. Really, they're an education company first, and that's what I love about what these guys do. So just call their 800 number, 1-800-613-3557, and talk to them. Ask for your free guide, just so you can start to understand a little bit about precious metals and if it makes sense for you in your IRA. Maybe you've got an old 401k sitting around that you want to convert to a precious metals IRA. You can do that, a self-directed account where Wall Street doesn't make money. You actually don't have to pay anyone those fees. You just get to do it all yourself, which is what we have. We have a self-directed IRA that we use to buy this as well. So anyway, go there right now or call their 800 number, 1-800-613-3557, or go to learredacted.com.
Well, Democrats secured themselves that convicted felon title for President-elect Donald Trump. He was sentenced on Friday in the payment case to adult film star Stormy Daniels. Now, he didn't get any jail time. He didn't get any fine, but his conviction stands and was put into place by Judge Juan Marchand, who we know is a compromised person. So is this it then? Will he now just let it lie now that he can take office? He doesn't need to fight this any longer. You have to have the appetite to continue for litigation. There are things he won't be able to do, like own a gun. Well, Lionel joins us from the Lionel Nation YouTube channel. He's a prosecutor and a constitutionalist. Lionel, you've been screaming all along, there is no crime. Where's the crime? What you mean by this is he was charged with a payment to hide a crime, but he was never told what that crime was. The judge actually denied his legal team the bill of particulars when he tried to prepare his defense. He didn't even get to know the crime until the day before the trial. The jury didn't have to agree on those crimes. So can you explain why the Sixth Amendment should have been honored here and never was? What does that mean for the rest of us? We can be charged with things we don't know. Can you explain that? And then we'll talk about what could happen next.
No, I can't explain it. First, a couple of things. Okay. You splendidly, absolutely, perfectly described this. You know, there's a couple of things. Every now and then, we will have in the criminal justice system kind of weird dispositions, diversion programs, first-time offenders. Let's kind of suspend it, go to some drug and alcohol counseling, and we'll dismiss. So it's kind of like we'll dismiss it. It's got diversion. When I was a prosecutor, we had a thing called absentee without a hold. I still don't know what that means. We had a thing called double secret probation. Honestly, well, one time a judge said, "I don't want you two to stop it." And I don't know what happened to the case. I still don't know. Very rare. But the idea is that we wanted justice. But in a case of this note, we don't even know what it was and how this jury found immediately. They found him guilty. 34 counts. Not even a split. Not even on count 12, we're not sure. That one boggles my mind. Here's the interesting thing that happened. When Judge Marchand decided to signal to the world, you know, I'm kind of leaning towards not having any kind of a sentence. I'm kind of maybe going to go a whatever it is. I'm going to. That almost told the Supreme Court, oh, okay, well, then we're going to deny any kind of an appeal now because you're signaling to us that this really isn't a big deal. If he faced prison or something, maybe we would take this case up. But since you kind of gave us the, the high sign, like, don't worry about it. The Supreme Court said, listen, we're not going to intervene. You can handle this best at an appeal. That locked Mershon in. That basically said, now I've got to do this, because had he double-crossed the Supremes and said, aha, booga booga, jail or prison, they would have gone nuts. So that's the weirdest thing, too. First things, judges don't signal what they're going to do. Sometimes there are hints, pretrial, pre-sentence investigations and things that the probation office files that they might suggest. But that's a different case. So number one, the most interesting thing was Mershon said, the judge, I ain't going to be doing anything. Okay. Supreme Court said, why intervene now? Okay, that's number one.
Yeah.
Number two, what he's going to do is, and this is the funny part, he cannot be vindicated unless he is convicted. Now let's ask you this, or ask this question. Was he convicted? Here is the worst word you ever want to hear any lawyer say. Technically, stop. Life is not technically. You're not technically pregnant. You're not technically dead. There is no such thing as this. But in law, it depends. Conviction is a formal finding of guilt by the court, a formal adjudication of guilt. Best example is if you get a speeding ticket, you get the points. That's a conviction. If you go to a traffic court and say, listen, if I go to traffic court, can you withhold adjudication, keep the points off my record? Then you're not convicted. That's like the best. It's a weird concept.
Right. Most of us drivers understand that bit. Yeah,
oh, yes,
exactly.
Yes. You want to keep the points off, withhold, NOLO, I'll go to school, keep the points off. Okay, fine.
Pay the
That's not
fine.
a conviction.
Right.
By the way, that's why I remember. Okay.
But I want to circle back around to how because we can take this two different ways. We can take this whether or not we support Donald Trump and we believe that he was politically prosecuted, which I think if you look into the case, that's a slam dunk. What I'm worried about is that now a court can deny somebody's Sixth Amendment right to be informed of the nature of your criminal accusation, and he wasn't. So the rest of us can be slapped with these prosecutions, and we don't get to know what it is that we're being tried with. So the presidential immunity bit, I'm less interested in the appeal bit. It's the fact that, like, I want him to fight this for the rest of us. And maybe that's a bit selfish because he's been through hell. So
he will.
Is this now? Okay, yeah. Why don't you go down that road if you don't mind?
Okay. What you're doing is you're talking about pleading. One of the things, aside from the Sixth Amendment, you have the right to a fair and a speedy trial. Fifth Amendment, you have due process. A person has to be fully informed of what it was that they did. Let me go back to the speeding ticket again. You were driving on this date, on this road, doing this fast. I'm the officer. You were going this fast. This is my badge number. This was the gun that I
radar
used.
reading.
Blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
You know everything. You can't, because here is the thing, and this is the standard. The way to test whether a case is well pled is if I pled guilty to this thing now, could you charge me with the very same offense tomorrow? Because it's so vague. In the case of a speeding ticket, no, because it was this date, this place. But if I said I pled guilty, let's say you pled guilty, tomorrow they file the same cases. This is another case of checks with another, and you say, wait a minute, that's the same one. The argument would be, I'm not sure. This case that you were found guilty of or pled guilty to was so vague and so filled with holes, I could charge you again with it, and the double jeopardy provision wouldn't be provided. So I don't even know what he did. So what happens is he is going to go and they're going to appeal this for a variety of reasons. Let me give you an example. Number one, can you be charged in state court for violating a federal law? This is really, can you be charged in the state of Georgia for violating a California law? What? This is a jurisdictional thing. In the state of New York, in Manhattan, Alvin Bragg's office does not handle anything other than New York state offenses that occur in Manhattan. He was alleged to have conspired to or actually violated federal laws. That's number one. Number two, when you tell a jury, now listen, I want you to find him guilty, and you don't even have to determine what it was. Let me back up a little bit with what you said. And I like the fact that you're homing in on the notion of not knowing what it is.
Sometimes that's the scariest thing for the rest of us. The rest of us are not going to run for president and be politically persecuted, but I don't want to have to shadow box against the government that's saying there's a crime here, but you don't know what it is.
You bring up a very good point. Let's take the crime of burglary. Burglary, what people normally, they say they robbed a house. No, you rob a person, but you burglarize. You enter or remain in the building, structure, or conveyance with the intention of committing an offense therein. What offense? What was it? That's okay. That's enough. We're going to presume you were going in there to commit an offense. Well, what? So sometimes there's a little vagueness of I don't know. There's a lot of things that really aren't clear. The problem with this is they also took, and let me just, again, I keep saying I'm backing up. For the first time, we're hearing people use the word lawfare over and over. They took this guy, Colangelo, from the DOJ, demoted him to a position to be an assistant ADA in Manhattan, to come up with this crazy cockamamie thing, to apply federal law to state law. But also what they did was they had this case, which was a misdemeanor, bootstrapped up to a felony because he had to be a convicted felon. So in order for him to be a convicted felon, they took this ridiculous case that the only time it's ever been done is as a misdemeanor. They bootstrapped it, converted it into a felony, and then they're stuck with this. And they were forced to. Not only, and Alvin Bragg, the real prosecutor, had no clue as to what was going on because this was a DOJ show. And Judge Mershon, who basically was doing everything in his power to keep that, because the bottom line is this, Natalie, both Mershon and Bragg have that scalp on the wall. I'm the first person to convict, to get a conviction and to adjudicate a president. That's all they wanted, period. You can reverse it later, and the left is going to say from now until the end of time that he was a convicted felon. But most probably the New York Court of Appeals, which is the highest court, interesting, trial court is called the Supreme Court, and the highest court is called the Court of Appeals. They're most probably going to reverse this. But what the president is doing now...
Okay, but on which grounds do you think? I mean, I can come up with the compromising of the judge, the Sixth Amendment violation, which you can tell I'm hung up on. Or one thing we haven't discussed yet is selective prosecution, because Hillary Clinton was not prosecuted for filing the Steele dossier cost in the same way. So you can't...
Good luck.
Selective prosecution is not a... appeals.
Every time a prosecutor prosecutes anybody, it's selective prosecution. They don't prosecute everybody. They have to ask themselves, is this a word that's not it? But what you're talking about is the best way. Number one, you had this, we couldn't read from the indictment what it was that he was actually charged with. That's number one. Number two, during the instructions themselves, jurors were told it doesn't matter whether you agree with anything. But most importantly, here is the bottom line. The theory of the case, remember, was that, and follow me on this, see if I can get through this. President Trump and his, I guess, accountant took a check that was paid in a non-disclosure agreement, which is completely legal, converted it, or actually listed it as a business expense, when in fact it was really, I guess, a political expense. But his goal, Natalie, was to subvert the U.S. electoral system. He was doing it to throw the election. Now, if that's true, how in the name of God does a trial court say no sentence. You did something that nobody in Manhattan history ever. And by the way, the New York legal system from Learned Hand on down was the premier, the black guy. People are going crazy. They're laughing at New York. Laughing? This is the days of Morgenthau, the second district. This is the biggest cases of all time. So what they're doing is they're saying, so let me get this straight, Mershon. You had somebody here who was in effect, by virtue of buying off a hooker or whatever she was, who, by the way, specifically has to pay him. He goes to this woman, yes. She ends up paying him, which is another story. But you're not giving him at least a day of probation? People that I know were going to do this. They were going to say, we're going to give you, you're going to have to come to court or do something in Mar-a-Lago, go to your room, unsupervised, write a letter, but you were going to do something. If not for this, for the contempt, because he was cited for contempt a million places. They got him on nothing. So this man subverted, absolutely corrupted, changed the course of American political history. And he doesn't pick up garbage on the side of the road. I think Naomi Campbell picked up garbage. I mean, shoplifters get something. Nothing. Nothing. Yeah. So you mean this? So if this doesn't look like lawfare, all they wanted to do was just say, you're a convicted felon. That's it. It is the worst. And also, you mentioned something called selective prosecution. There's something worse called target prosecution. See, selective is a different thing. A lot of times people will say, prosecutors a lot of times will use discretion. I did. If there was a case, a man comes back, he's a troubled veteran, he's an alcoholic, he stole something. Or a person steals. One time I refused to prosecute a man who stole diapers and baby food from a store. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. He's like, this is before eBay. So that was discretion. But target prosecution. Laurenti Beria, this was Stalin's person, said, show me the man, I'll show you the crime. I want you to get Natali. Get her. Or what? Find something. Normally the prosecutor sits, somebody comes to him and says, we've got something we want to bring to your attention. We, the police, the FBI, state police, we've been told about this. We've investigated this. What do you think? This is different. They started off with the target of get Trump, and they worked their way down into this ridiculous. And Natali, when I tell you this, and I know this sounds like an exaggeration, nobody can explain what this is. Nobody. Yeah. I don't know what he did. I don't know. 34 counts. If you read the indictment, I've read it so many times. I don't understand it. I don't know what he did by writing a check, how the goal was, the intent. He wrote this check to hide another crime, the other crime being the theft of the election. I don't even understand it. So
they don't know.
Aside from that,
they hid the football with the most marquee defendant in the world. Obviously, that is politically motivated. So I guess one of the things so you say he will appeal and you think he will win.
They're going to overturn. Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. Now, think about old Jack Smith. We haven't mentioned him. This guy.
Yes, and I want to. So Jack Smith, the news is that he has resigned, even though a court has ruled that he was inappropriately appointed, even though he's trying to get his report published, even though a court has said you can't do that because you will impugn the existing defendants. He now has resigned. Does that protect him from anything? So 2 questions. Does that protect him from anything? Shouldn't we want to look into this? And 2, can they pull this again in a Trump second term?
Maybe. Well, going back to the first one, he has to resign. It is absolutely pro forma. After every U.S. attorney always gives him a letter of resignation. Everybody does this. It was expected. But what you bring up very correctly, it's like almost being declared you're divorced, and the judge grants your divorce, and you walk aside and you know what? I've had it. I'm leaving. It's like, we're already divorced. Is that okay? Fine. It's a bit moot at this point. What the reason for this was because the Supreme Court in this immunity case, which nobody wants to talk about, that's the one that got him. Had it not been for that, been a different story. Completely. Okay. Even though this guy, remember, that Mar-a-Lago case was so bad. Let me also remind, for those who don't know, this is where they went through Melania's underwear drawer. You tell
and Barron's
people that
room
things
and all of those things.
Things stick in your mind, you know. It's like this is. It's like that's enough, you know. But anyway, but they went and they had pictures of all these boxes. They weren't classified. Somebody actually calculated that the actual number of files or papers that were deemed by the records clerk or the archivist or whatever to be subject to this criminal complaint would be like a file folder full. So they had boxes and boxes written classified. It was all staged. How they didn't sanction him on that, I have no idea. So he's walking. It's done. It's finished. And now the thing is they're going to do, here's the next question. Do you release the report? Case is done. Does the DOJ say, well, okay, fine. But let me take what we find out. Is that another dig? It's like, wait a minute. Is there some finality to everything? Remember years ago, this is, I think, before your time, but there was this thing called the independent counsel. And now we have the special prosecutor. And we have all of these, and Scalia, by the way, hated these. And there's something we're going to have to look at about these outboard hired guns who work on behalf of this sniveling Merrick Garland. This guy who just sat back, he's a sock puppet who allowed all of this to occur under his watch. It was, put it this way, if you're going to get somebody, make it at least, nobody thought Nixon was railroaded. Even with Clinton and his problems, nobody thought they were railroaded. There was actually something there, something you could at least describe. If you can't put the charges on a bumper sticker, you're wasting your time. Nobody knows exactly what Trump did. And by the way, to Trump's, I hope so. Look, I don't know about you, but January 6th was a failure to get the proper parade permit. That was trespass. That was not anything. It was a stupid nothing. But that has been hyped up, inflated into this attack against democracy. Trump, even though we know a million times he said, don't do this. Even though we have Nancy Pelosi on tape saying, he said, call the National Guard. This is some insurrectionist, don't you think? Some seditionist. He tells Nancy Pelosi, hey, call the National Guard. And by the way, one more thing I've got to tell you.
But I don't want to, I want to go back to this documents case and Jack Smith because you can tell I'm hung up on the protocol here. Like, you have to know what you're defending yourself against. And there are two other defendants who, if this report is released, will not have their due process. So even if you hate Trump and you want to see this, there are two other people who have been dragnet who will be impugned with the release of this and will not have their day in court. And we are supposed to have equal justice under the law. So I'm upset on behalf of these two people. I don't even know. Is this legitimate?
Well, I don't even know supposedly the facts of the case, why they're, I'm sorry. Most people don't even know their names. Or one was I think he told somebody, would you move this over here? He didn't know what. Do you look at these two people? Just look at them and ask, do you think they were involved in some malicious case to hide national secrets? I don't know.
But they're being prosecuted and just for, So again, I go back to,
well, you know
if they
what?
can do this to them, they can do it to us. Any one of us.
Trump will pardon them. He's the president. He can pardon.
Okay.
So anyway, that's another story. Let me also, speaking of which, I'm gonna go nuts now. You ready for this?
Okay.
Kathy Hochul, the governor of New York, is going to pardon Trump. In the interest of justice and all this, they're going to tell her, you're going to do this because he is going to destroy. If you have any hope, whatever, Because remember, we've got a lot of stuff going on that he's going to be involved in. He also has this fellow named Andrew Cuomo who's going to be running for mayor. So anyway, New York's going to be in the offing. So don't be surprised if she, honest to God, does not pardon him, because the reason why is simply this. This was not an Alvin Bragg production. This was a DOJ production. And Biden and the Democrats are going to tell her, do the right thing, kill this. Just get rid of it, because eventually who knows? Don't be surprised, because it's that bad.
You can see how I don't want it to happen because he's president. I want it to happen because the Constitution works. And that's why I'm so upset about it. I texted Lionel.
God.
I know I'm being a purist here, but I texted Lionel on Friday when the sentencing was happening, and I said I'm effing furious. And you said you should be, but it's because of the due process on behalf of the rest of us. I'm sorry, but I have to feel this way, that it's equal justice under the law and that it protects us all.
Let me stop you. I hate to listen. I want to tell you something. Welcome to the club. I have this stupid thing right here next to this thing called the Constitution. And what drove me crazy my whole life is, in addition to this, how come we went after Native Americans for smoking peyote or drinking peyote when during Prohibition, Catholics and Jews could drink wine? I don't understand. There's so much. Why this or why not that? How come this country, all people are created equal, except for the fact that we had a fugitive slave clause in our Constitution, which mandated that you had to return runaway slaves. Our whole system is a series of contradictions. I don't understand any of this. I don't understand how we came up with privacy. I don't understand how, I don't get any. So this is one of these things that it goes to show you're right about that. The bottom line is simply this. Tell me what I did, so that when I plead guilty to it, or when the jury hears my fate, they know exactly what it is I did or didn't do. Is that too much to ask? That's it. I've had judges say, or a civil case, motion to dismiss granted, failure to state a cause of action. Motion to dismiss. This isn't a crime. What does this mean? Who does this? What does that mean? No, I'm not going to let you plead to that. That's not a crime. No, it's done all the time. What they did to President Trump is just unheard of. I mean, there are serial killers who've had an easier time than this. I'm serious. What they did to him, and maybe in a way it's good for him because of this overkill, but it just absolutely infuriates me. And he's going to fight back. And by the way, can he pardon himself? Not because of a state case, because he can't do that, but in other matters too. I mean, don't be surprised, believe it or not, if afterwards, on the very last day, Biden doesn't pardon Trump. Because remember, the political aspects of this behind the scenes is so incredible. This is like nothing else. This is what we're going through right now, especially this last quote election, has so many, the Republicans are so fractured. We don't know who's who. People are double crossing and stabbing. So that's another story. But what we're seeing right now is something that is so incredible. And the question you're going to ask is, what's going to be the legacy of Judge Merchan? Are people going to say, bravo? Some partisan New York, some Democrats in New York will, but a lot of people in the legal profession will say, this is not good. You allowed this? Because it was almost like, because remember, New York in particular is almost like a patronage. It is a politicized, the bench, 99% are terrific. But this is why we get to the other issue. Should judges be appointed, or should they run for office? Should they have lifetime appointments? How do you politicize? How do you put people? How do you say, are you a Democratic judge or a Republican judge? And who put you in? And that's another issue. That's another issue.
Yeah.
You know, when they say...
But even in the worst case scenario, Judge Merchan could be sanctioned and removed from his post, possibly. Worst case for him. But he would still make six figures on the speaking tour because Democrats will love him. He's not going to be. He's not going to
be sanctioned, and he didn't. No, he didn't do anything that was illegal. Illegal.
He didn't recuse himself based on a compromising.
Doesn't have to.
Yeah.
Well, He doesn't have to. Now, in some jurisdictions, the moment you get one bite of the apple, so they say, anytime you say, I want you to recuse yourself, as long as the motion is okay on the four corners, you've got to recuse yourself. Now, the second person you get, you're on your own. Most of the time, most judges say, I don't want to be a part of a case where you think, recusal motions are rare. Most of the time, people say, I got a caseload up to here. Fine, take it. But this one, no. This looks so bad. Put it this way, Alvin Bragg, what does he say? He wasn't even in the courtroom. He wasn't even there. Alvin Bragg could have left and gone to the country. He didn't know. It's just like with Letitia James in the documents case, or the loan case, in a case where there's no victim. Let me say this again. There's no victim. Nobody. Yeah. She was never even in the courtroom.
Has a strong probability of being overturned as well, and he will get that money back that he's already paid. That's a good one. By the way, that's a different story. But you know how you've got a very good chance when you're on appeal and the appellate judges say, "What? That's a good sign." Where's the victim? Yeah.
Or no. Yeah. Just basically, what happened? What? These are judges who know everything, and they're saying, I don't understand this.
The judges in that appeal said, has this ever been done before where there's no victim? And the lawyers said, well, no. And the lawyers then basically had to beg to not be punished for having brought the case in the first place. So,
remember,
that's a whole other...
but wait, last quick. They're doing it to Rudy Giuliani. Rudy Giuliani, they disbarred him, whatever, because he supposedly brought cases. He and Sidney Powell and others brought cases that were so ridiculous and so ill thought. Well, what about this? What about this one? This is the most incredible case. And by the way, last one, and I'll let you go. Listen to me, you're going to let me go. You and your husband try to get a loan in your house and claim that you live in a $3 billion home. And try to get a line of equity based on your appraisal of your home for $3 billion. And you know what, Chase or whatever's going to say? You're going to say, no, we do the appraisal, not you. Right. You can say $3 billion. No. Well, that's what supposedly Trump did. It's the bank that says this. The bank says, no, it doesn't work like that. The bank said he's not defrauding us. Anyway, that's for another issue. It's bizarre.
For another issue. All right. Well, Indeed. That's where it stands now. We do have convicted felon President-elect Donald Trump. Democrats got it. They wanted it, right. But we think that this is going to eventually go to appeals. So thank you for your expertise. You can follow Lionel on the Lionel Nation YouTube channel. He's also on X, very vocal there, Lionel Media. So thank you for joining us. And we'll talk to you again another time, I'm sure.
Thank you. Indeed.
That's going to do it for us today on Redacted. Thank you so much for joining us. Hey, don't forget to subscribe to our newsletter because we write that in the morning before every show comes out, Monday through Thursday. So if you'd like to have original source material, study up on the stories we're going to talk about, make sure that you have the same sources that we do. You can educate yourself. We don't require that you agree with us. We just want you to be as informed as possible. So go to redacted.inc, sign up for the free newsletter, and it comes out. It's not behind a paywall. We don't upsell you anything. Free means free. So again, subscribe at redacted.inc. We'll be back here tomorrow, everybody. We'll see you then. Thanks for joining us today.